Hello, hi everybody. I don't start my videos that way, that was really awkward. Hey guys, it's JaaackJack and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, we have a Bible study video, and like I mentioned in my previous one, we are gonna be going over 1 Samuel chapter 17, which I'm really excited about because as you guys know, this is the story of David and Goliath, and I think, well, number one, this is one of my favorite stories, but also number two, this is such a fitting story for what we're experiencing right now as I was gonna say a nation, but really it's worldwide. What we're experiencing as humans, as humanity here on earth. I also have my Trust the Process hat from True and Noble Apparel. I will have a link down below for this, as well as a coupon code if you guys are interested in picking this up. I love how it's like kind of distressed. It just gives it a cool look. So if you missed my last Bible study, we went over 1 Samuel chapter 8, I think. Let me see. Well, we went over where the people of Israel were wanting a king. Samuel was, growing old, and they're like, give us a king like the other nations so we could be like the other nations, and this king can lead us, and this and that. And it displeased Samuel, it displeased God, and yet they still got a king, which was Saul. So now we move into David and Goliath. And this is actually funny. I didn't realize this until like earlier this morning, but I have done a Bible study on this a long time ago. My very first ever Bible study that I've ever done in my life, I did with the youth from my church. And I did it with one of Johnny's cousins, and we sat there with the youth and we kind of shared some points and topics from this story. But that was my very first Bible study I ever did. It is on YouTube if you guys want to see it, but I'm warning you now, it's long and it's awkward, so you probably don't want to see it. But anyways, it's just so cool to see, how we come full circle sometimes. And what I love about this story is that it is so relatable to so many things that we experience in our lives, but I think especially right now, it is so relatable with the coronavirus and this huge pandemic happening around the world, because Goliath represents this big, scary, big obstacle that we're faced with. And in this story, we see how David defeats Goliath. And I say this in every Bible study video, but as I read through this, I'm just sharing with you guys what sticks out to me or what I think is important as I'm reading. If there's something else that speaks out to you, or the Holy Spirit is speaking to you in a different way while reading this, please share it in the comments below, because I'd love to hear it. Just because I think one thing while reading this doesn't mean it's the only thing you can think. It doesn't mean it's always correct either. This is just what is speaking to me as I am reading. So I want to hear what speaks to you as we read as well. So at this point in the story, the Lord is displeased with Saul because he has chose not to obey the Lord fully, and so that displeased him, and the Lord has rejected Saul as the king, and he tells Samuel, who is basically this messenger between God and the people of Israel. The Lord tells Samuel, okay, Saul ain't it. We need to find another king. And so go find another king and let's anoint another king, basically. So the Lord sends Samuel to Jesse of Bethlehem and all of his sons. He has a total of 7 sons, and all of them but one are very big, muscular men, and they look very strong and worthy to be king, right? And so when Samuel gets there, he's like, oh, okay, this guy is big, like he could be the next king. But the Lord tells him, no, that's not him. And the Lord actually shows him it's David, who is the youngest of the brothers and the smallest and the weakest, and he is the shepherd boy, and he herds the sheep and tends to them. But that is who God chose to anoint as the next king. But David doesn't become king right away. But in that moment, Samuel anoints him as king. And the reason being is not because God thought it'd be fun, like, oh, this would be a funny trick, let's get the weakest one to make him king. No, he could see the quality of David's heart, and David was a faithful man of God. Okay, so that was just a little background on David. So now let's officially begin. 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 1. Now the Philistines gathered their forces for war and assembled at Socoh in Judah. They pitched camp at Ephes Damim, between Socoh and Azekah. Why are these places so hard to say? Verse 2, Saul and the Israelites assembled a camp in the valley of Elah and drew up their battle line to meet the Philistines. The Philistines occupied one hill and the Israelites another, with the valley between them. A champion named Goliath, who was from Gath, came from the Philistine camp. His height was 6 cubits and a span, which is 9 feet and 9 inches. Dude, he's huge. 9 feet and 9 inches. I think like in the Guinness Book of Record, like I think 7 foot is like the tallest that we've seen maybe. I don't know, I could be wrong on that. But from what I've seen, like reading the books growing up, that's like the biggest. And when I see pictures of that, I'm like, whoa, this guy's huge. But this guy was even taller. Goliath was 9 feet and 9 inches. He had a bronze helmet on his head and wore a coat of scale armor and bronze weighing 5,000 shekels, which equals 125 pounds. Not only is he huge, but he is strong, carrying 125 pounds of armor on him. Like, whoa. On his leg, he wore bronze greaves. That is basically a shin guard. And a bronze javelin was slung on his back. His spear shaft was like a weaver's rod, and its iron paint weighed 600 shekels, which is 15 pounds. His shield bearer went ahead of him. Verse 8, Goliath stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel, "Why do you come out and line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine, and are you not the servant of Saul? Choose a man and have him come to me. If he is able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us." So he is like, first of all, he's so cocky because he knows he's this big giant, right? And he's like, nobody can defeat me. So he's like mocking them, he's teasing them, threatening them, like, come at me, bro, basically. And he's saying, if you can kill me, which you won't, if you can kill me, then we'll be your servants. But if I kill whoever you send out, you become our servants. But the Philistines said, "This day I defy the armies of Israel. Give me a man and let us fight each other." Again, he's like mocking them and throwing threats at them. On hearing the Philistines' words, Saul and all the Israelites were dismayed and terrified. I mean, yeah, I would be too, to be honest. Like, this guy is huge, and making all these comments, I don't know about you, but I'd be scared. Verse 12, now David was a son of an Ephrathite named Jesse, who was from Bethlehem in Judah. Jesse had 8 sons. Oh, did I say 7 earlier? I meant 8, sorry. Jesse had 8 sons, and in Saul's time, he was very old. Jesse's 3 oldest sons had followed Saul in the war, so they were, warriors, or part of the army. The firstborn was Eliab, the second Abinadab, and the third Shammah. David was the youngest. The 3 oldest followed Saul, but David went back and forth from Saul to tend to his father's sheep at Bethlehem. Because remember, like I mentioned earlier, that's like the oldest brothers, they're strong and masculine, so they went to fight in the war, but David, being the youngest and weakest, just tend to the sheep. Verse 16, for 40 days the Philistines came forward every morning and evening and took his stand. Now Jesse said to his son David, take this ephah, which is about 36 pounds, of roasted grain and these 10 loaves of bread for your brothers, and hurry to their camp. Take along these 10 cheeses to the commander of their unit. See how your brothers are, and bring back some assurance from them. So he's like, take all this, go check on them, and then come back and report to me. Verse 19, they are with Saul and all the men of Israel in the valley of Elah, fighting against the Philistines. Early in the morning, David left the flock in care of a shepherd, loaded up and set out as Jesse had directed. He reached the camp as the army was going out to its battle positions, shouting the war cry. Israel and the Philistines were drawing up their lines facing each other. David David left his things with the keeper of supplies, ran to the battle lines, and asked his brothers how they were. As he was talking to them, Goliath, the Philistine champion from Gath, stepped out from the lines and shouted his usual defiance, and David heard it. Whenever the Israelites saw the man, they all fled from him in great fear. Again, I would too if this 9-foot giant was coming up to me saying these threats and mocking, like I would run away too. Verse 25, now the Israelites had been saying, do you see how this man keeps coming out? He comes out to defy Israel. The king will give great wealth to the man who kills him. He will also give him his daughter in marriage and will exempt his family from taxes in Israel. So they're basically like, they're trying to find who in the Israel army, like, look at, this is how you'll be rewarded, so go fight him. Who can go kill him for us? David asked the man standing near him, what will be done for the man who kills the Philistine and removes this disgrace from Israel? Who is the uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? So David is getting like heated up here because he's a man of God, he's faithful, he is devoted to the Lord, and so when he hears this Philistine defying the Israelites, he's upset by this. So he's like, okay, what will happen to the one who is able to remove this disgrace from Israel? Like, remove this pest, this giant pest. David is showing right here already how he's not afraid. He's basically saying, like, who is this guy? Like, who gives him the right to defy our armies of the living God? They repeated to him what had been said and told him, this is what will be done for the man who kills him. Then Eliab, David's oldest brother, heard him speaking with the men. He burned with anger at him and asked, why have you come down here? And with whom did you leave those few sheep in the wilderness? I know how conceited you are and how wicked your heart is. You came down only to watch the battle. So right now his brothers are getting like the wrong impression of him. You know, David originally went to go and check on his brothers and provide them with the food that his father gave him. But, you know, when he hears this Philistine talking, he's getting upset. So David's brother is like, what are you doing here? Like, you just wanted front row seat to the battle? Like, how conceited are you? Verse 29, now what have I done? Said David. Can I even speak? Then he turned away to someone else and brought up the same matter, and the men answered him as before. What David said was overheard and reported to Saul, and Saul sent for him. Now verse 32, this is where David says to Saul, let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant, meaning like me David, your servant will go and fight him. Saul replied, you are not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him. You are only a young man, and he has been a warrior from his youth. So he's discrediting David here, like, this Philistine, Goliath, he's been a warrior training since he was young, and you are just this young boy who tends after the sheep. Like, what are you gonna do? Like, you can't fight him. But David said to Saul, your servant had been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God. I love this part. The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of the Philistine. Johnny and I actually, before filming this, we were sitting down talking about this story because David and Goliath is actually a story Johnny really likes as well. So we were just talking about the story and talking about what sticks out most to us and what we love most. Johnny was saying, like, David was such an unlikely person, but because he believed, because he had faith in God, he was able to overcome, you know, Goliath. But I also love how confident David is in the Lord, because he knows that the Lord has brought him out of troubles before. The Lord will see him out again. Like, he knows the Lord has done miracles in his life, and he will continue to do miracles. And I think that is the kind of faith that we need to have, especially in this moment of all this fear and panic in the world. God has seen you out of everything that you've experienced in your life so far. What makes you think he's not going to see you out of this as well? David said, the Lord who rescued me from the paws of the lions and the bears is the same Lord that is going to rescue me from the hands of the Philistine. So David has this amazing confidence in the Lord. I want to have that confidence. I want you to have that confidence too. Like, that is what we should strive for, that confidence in the Lord that he will see us out through all of these situations. He's done it before, he will do it again. Saul said to David, "Go, and the Lord be with you." So I still don't think they're very confident in him. I'm pretty sure they're like, okay, this kid wants to go get killed. Good luck, buddy. Go do your thing. And then verse 38 says, "Then Saul dressed David in his own tunic. He put a coat of armor on him and a bronze helmet on his head. David fastened on the sword over his tunic and tried walking around because he was not used to them. 'I cannot go in these,' he said to Saul, 'because I am not used to them.' So he took them off. Then he took his staff in one hand. He chose 5 smooth stones from the stream, put them in the pouch of his shepherd's bag, and his sling in his hand, approached the Philistine." So they try to suit him up in all this armor, and he's like, whoa, this is like big, bulky, and awkward. I can't go like this because I'm not comfortable in this. This is not what I'm used to. And so he takes just a sling and a few stones, and he goes out to face this giant. Like, this is like intense and scary, right? You're going to face this 9-foot giant who is armored. Like, he's completely armored. Remember, his armor is 125 pounds. He's got his weapons and everything. Plus, he's 9 feet tall. And then you're just this little boy with a sling and some rocks. Like, oh my gosh, how terrifying, right? Meanwhile, the Philistine with his shield bearer in front of him kept coming closer to David. He looked David over and saw he was a little more than a boy, glowing with health and handsome, and he despised him. He said to David, "Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks?" So he's basically mocking David. And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. "Come here," he said, "and I'll give your flesh to the birds and the wild animals." David said to the Philistine, "You come against me." I love this like little monologue from David. So good. David said to the Philistine, "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. This very day I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds and the wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel." Oh my gosh. He's glorifying God through all of this, not like, look at me, I'm going to be able to defeat him. No, this is all for the glory of God. It says the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. All those gathered here will know that this is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all to you. He will give all of you into our hands. Dude, I freaking love this. David is not only just so confident in the Lord, but he is doing everything, again, to just glorify God and let God's name be known throughout the land. He doesn't care about his name. Like, he's not saying, and then everyone will know David killed Goliath. Like, he doesn't care about that. He just wants to share that the strength that the Lord gives you. Oh, and I love that so much. Verse 48, as the Philistine moved closer to attack him, David ran quickly towards the battle line to meet him. Reaching out his bag and taking out one stone, he slung it and struck the Philistine on the forehead. The stone sank into his forehead and he fell face down on the ground. Think of that kind of strength. Like, you're this little boy with just like a little rock and a sling and this big old giant, and you have to like sling that so hard to hit in the forehead, and he literally collapses right there on the spot. 1 stone is all it took. He took 5, but it only took 1 stone. So David, triumphant over the Philistine with a sling and a stone, without a sword in his hand, he struck down the Philistine and killed him. Right then and there, David defeated Goliath. David ran over and stood over him. He took hold of the Philistine's sword and drew it from its sheath. After he killed him, he cut off his head with the sword. Ugh. I mean, but he did what he said he was gonna do. When the Philistines saw that their hero was dead, they turned and ran. They're like, dude, he just killed our best warrior, our champion. He just killed him. Like, we better dip. Then the men of Israel and Judah surged forward with a shout and pursued the Philistines to the entrance of Gath and to the gates of Ekron. Their death were strewn along the Sharam road to Gath and Ekron. When the Israelites returned from chasing the Philistines, they plundered their camp. David took the Philistine's head and brought it to Jerusalem. He put the Philistine's weapon in his own tent. As Saul watched David going out to meet the Philistine, he said to Abner, commander of the army, "Abner, whose son is that young man?" Abner replied, "As surely as you live, your majesty, I don't know." The king said, "Find out whose son this young man is." Which, first of all, this whole conversation right here confuses me, because in just the chapter or two before, in just the chapter before, Saul was dealing with these evil spirits, or it said he was tormented by an evil or harmful spirit. And so he had sent out and received David to help him with that. It said David would play the lyre? I'm not quite sure how to say that, or what exactly that is. But nonetheless, David was the one sent out to help Saul overcome these evil spirits. And it even said in chapter 16 that Saul liked him very much, and David became one of his armor bearers, which to my understanding, an armor bearer is someone who's almost like your right-hand man, but just someone there to help you. So there was kind of already something established between them. So I was confused to read here. Saul is asking who is that young man? Who is that? Go find out whose son he is. So that part confused me. If you guys have any, if you guys can clarify that, or if you have any thoughts, maybe he just didn't recognize David because he knows David as this shepherd boy. Maybe that's what it is. Saul knows David as this young shepherd boy, but not as a warrior. So maybe he just didn't recognize him. He's like, that can't be David, because David's this little weakling, and this guy just defeated the Philistine. So maybe that's what it is. I don't know, you guys let me know. As soon as David returned from killing the Philistine, Abner took him and brought him before Saul, with David still holding the Philistine's head. Ugh, gross. "Whose son are you, young man?" Saul asked him. Still doesn't recognize David. That's so weird. David said, "I am the son of your servant Jesse of Bethlehem." And that is it for chapter 17. But that was the story of David defeating Goliath. I just love this story because I think there's so much to learn from David in just this chapter alone. The confidence that he has, the faith, the fearlessness. How many of us right now are in a state of fear because of everything that is going on in the world? It's normal because we're human to be afraid, but when everyone around, all the Israelites are so afraid of, going up against Goliath, they're all afraid, but yet it takes one person, David, who had no fear at all, who had faith in the Lord, to go up and stand up against this, I almost said this virus because I was thinking of right now, the coronavirus. Stand up against this Goliath, this Philistine, and defeat him. And so I think it's just so beautiful how God will use the most unlikely of people to make the biggest of impacts, right? And I think this even what's the word I'm looking for? Foreshadows, or yeah, maybe that's the word I'm looking for. Foreshadows to the gospel and the story of Jesus, how Jesus was the unlikeliest of person, the most unlikely person to be the Messiah, to be the anointed one, to save us all. Because the religious leaders and rulers of that time, they saw Jesus as this rebel, who is this little troublemaker, basically. But really, it's just God continuing to use the most unlikely of people to make the biggest of impacts in the world. And I think that's amazing. And I think right now, in our society, our eyes are always on, who is up there, which is celebrities or leaders of some sort. But right now, who is our David right now in this Goliath? It is the most unlikely of people. It's the delivery drivers. It's the grocery food workers. It's the nurses and the doctors. It's the people that we don't pay too much attention to on a day-to-day basis, that are really the ones that are making such a huge impact to help us overcome this obstacle, this Goliath, which happens to be the coronavirus. And I think this also just goes to show how we shouldn't be afraid, because God saw David out of this obstacle. He's seen him out of many, and God has seen us out of many obstacles, so he'll see us out of this one as well. And so that's why I hope that this story encourages you not to live in fear, and I hope that this encourages you to be so fearless in your faith and your trust in God and your confidence in God. And hopefully this also just eases any anxiety that may be going on right now. I know this can be a scary time for so many people. We're all, you know, enduring this, but we're all experiencing it maybe differently one way or another. So whatever struggle or obstacle that you're being faced with right now, I want you to know with confidence that the Lord will see you out of it. He's done it before, maybe in a different circumstance, but he's seen you out of storms before. He'll see you out of this storm. So that was it for today's Bible study. I absolutely just loved jumping on camera and sharing this with you guys. I hope you enjoyed it and found it beneficial, and just also, I just hope it gave you that encouragement that you needed today and during this time. I can't wait to read your guys' comments. I really hope you share what was speaking to you and what you love most about this story. What sticks out to you most about the story of David and Goliath, and why do you think it's such a impactful story that so many people know about? Like, even people who aren't like Christians, they know the story of David and Goliath. It's used in every like sports reference ever of, you know, referring to like an underdog overcoming, you know, this big obstacle or beast or whatever. They always reference David and Goliath when they're speaking about underdogs. So why do you think this is such an impactful story? I want to hear what sticks out to you and what speaks to you. So I love you guys, and I hope you're having an awesome day, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Oh, also, in case you missed my last video, I did share what my reading plan is for the rest of the year, so I'll include that right here if you guys want to mark these down in your calendar and join me. So next month we're actually going to be reading a handful of books, but they're all shorter chapters, so that's why there's multiple. But again, just a chapter a day, so I can't wait to read those with you guys for next month, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.